So, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to go chapter by chapter. In chapter 2, personality. Remember we talked about personality, correct? Relatively stable series of characteristics that define the person over time. Okay, very straightforward. Just what is personality? You're not going to be asked what is personality on an exam. Just so you understand, again, how does it influence, what is the facet? There are two kinds of ways to explain behavior. Remember we talked about dispositional or situational. Very good. So personality is, which of the two? Right, disposition. Very good. That's all it is. So look at dispositional, situational, and interactionist. Okay, interactionist is? Very good. Okay, good. A combination of both. We talked about trait activation theory. Right? People have personality traits, facets that make up their personality. Okay, trait activation theory says traits appear when they're required. So when you have to bring out a particular trait or a facet of your personality, it'll come out in a particular context. So you activate the trait only when you need it. It doesn't always show regardless of the situation. That's all it says. Okay? Okay, the 5-factor model of personality. The big 5, what are they?
Extroversion.
Openness. 2.
Experience.
Good. C. Conscientiousness. E. Extroversion. A. And N is the opposite. But we want?
Emotional stability.
Thank you. Very good. Let's go back in grade 5. It's so great. Okay, we all repeated well. Again, we have to understand what each means. Now, we're not going to be able to define an entire chapter on each personality, but what are the characteristics of each? I would expect you to know. Okay, what does each facet or each dimension represent? And what kinds of jobs, for example, would appeal to somebody who's an extrovert versus somebody who's more on the emotional stability side? You have to be able to give me some examples. Okay? Now, understand that one job could use multiple. Okay? In fact, nobody just has one. We don't just say, oh, he's a good lawyer because he's conscientious. Or she's a great customer service rep because she's agreeable. No, because there's multiple. There's more than just agreeableness. You can have multiple dimensions to one's personality. Okay? So we're good with that. So we talked about locus of control. What kinds of locus of control are there? I'll give you a hint. There are 2.
It's internal and external.
Thank you. It was jumping right in. That's good. Internal and external. Right. Internals. What is an internal locus of control?
You control your own space.
Control the outcomes. You believe you have the power to dictate what is required to get out of whatever situation that you're in. Right. Yeah, you have the power. Externals believe in
Other people.
external factors, including other people and luck. Okay, but they're external factors, exactly. Things outside of their control. All right, we talked about self-monitoring. Self-monitoring being
Controlling your actions.
regulate how you behave.
Controlling your actions.
Controlling your actions depending on the situation. Very good. Self-esteem is what? What is self-esteem?
How you view yourself positively.
How you view yourself. And typically it's positively. We can have low self-esteem or high self-esteem. It's basically the way we view ourselves. How we see our own value. Okay? How we value our own being, basically. Okay? What is learning?
Relatively stable.
Personality.
Change in behavior from the past experiences.
Like someone's been studying their notes. Okay? Change in behavior. Okay? It's a relatively change in behavior based on acquisition of new skills and being exposed to new experiences. Okay? So one can have certain dispositions, but people can also learn new behaviors through exposure to training and so on. Okay? So, operant learning. What is the notion behind operant? The word operant, what does that mean?
I'm learning to operate from the environment to get outcomes.
So operant is by doing, exactly. It's the environment that gives you the feedback, and it's based on what? What is operant learning based on?
Reinforcements and like punishments.
Right, consequences, right? Reinforcements, punishments, rewards, and so on. So you do things based on the expected outcomes and the expected consequence, hopefully positive consequence. Or it could work to avoid punishment as well. So you learn by doing. Okay, operant learning is learning by doing within a particular environment. Talk about positive and negative reinforcements. Those four, remember we talked about positive reinforcement is adding a positive sentence, exactly, giving you something good, a reward. Okay? Negative reinforcement. Removal of a negative stimulus. Okay, so you remove a negative stimulus, very good. Talked about, we're good with that so far, chapter 2, yes?
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. Okay, we talked about punishment as well, we know what punishment is, right? We're good? We're good with these, yes? We talked about punishment is the application of a negative stimulus, right? Talk about the removal, okay, compared to reward, which is the application of a positive. What's the fourth one in the whole spectrum that we talked about? Extinction, which is?
Removing it completely.
Dissipation. Why would it dissipate? Why would someone's behavior dissipate or go away? To ignore it, okay? We're not applying, we're just not applying anything. We're ignoring, so we're not giving that person the benefit of the reinforcement. Okay, so it's removal, there's no reinforcement. Okay, all right, when would you use delayed reinforcement?
When you want it to be persist.
Say when you want something to be, no, okay. Use delayed reinforcement and versus continuous. If you want someone to learn something quickly, immediately, what would you do?
Continuous and without delay.
Right, continuous, so every time and without delay. That's for someone to learn something quickly, usually in emergency type situations where their actions could be potentially dangerous. So you need someone to learn right away. Your reinforcement has to be immediate, okay, and continuous every single time you see it. If you need someone to learn something over the long run, you would do
Long delay and partial.
delayed and partial. Okay, so partial. Every now and then, you remind, you correct along the way. You don't have to do it every single time you see it. You have a longer time to correct, therefore, are more likely to develop this behavior, to change their overall behavior over time to the new behavior that is required. Okay, now it won't be instant, but it will be longer over time. That's what you have, correct?
What would be an example of that? Like a behavior you want to learn over time?
Let's say you're using a particular software. You're learning a particular software at work, and if I'm going to tell you, okay, you know what, every time you make a mistake, I come over your shoulder, no, that's wrong, no, do it like this, no, do it like that. You'll learn to only do it because I'm there. You'll learn to only do it because you're reminded to do it. You're not learning to change your behavior because it benefits you. If I remind you every week, every 2 weeks, how's that going? Have you tried this? Have you seen that? Remember, don't forget this piece. After a while, I'm expecting between my reinforcements that you're also doing it in that manner. Every now and then you slip off, and then I bring it up again. At some point, you'll become an expert in that software because you will have had continual reinforcement over a much longer period of time, rather than fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, and you've made your change, and I've asked you to do it the right way, you've done it right, and then I stop reinforcing. Then at some point, if you don't do anything, if you change your behavior, and I don't say anything about it, you can easily slip back to using, let's say, the old software. Okay? So again, so you want something for someone in a dangerous situation where the equipment might be hazardous or whatever, you might see a manufacturing environment, for example, you'd have somebody doing something wrong, you want to make sure you change it right away, so yes, you correct every single time, because you need them to understand the gravity of the situation. Okay, and you'd probably do it for always. Okay? Any questions about chapter 2? I'll go back. Anything about those concepts? Very straightforward, you all have a handle on them, very good. Anybody have any questions about how these things function? Okay, chapter 3, perception. What is perception?
Kind of distort reality and like you protect yourself.
Okay, that's perceptual defense, but that's close. Okay, but perception. What is just simple definition of perception?
It's the way you see a situation from your own experiences.
Okay, so you have to use something. What do you use?
Your values.
Your senses. Okay, it's filtered through values, but yes, use your senses to capture information. You can perceive through your eyes, ears, nose, touch. Okay, all your senses pick up information, and that's how we define perception. Okay, what influences perception? Your values, correct. What else? Experiences. Context, exactly. Okay? These are all factors that will influence someone's interpretation of what they see, smell, feel, hear. Okay? We're good with that? Bruner, what did he say? What did Bruner say about perceptual process? What do you need?
Well, I was gonna say, wasn't he the one that did the 6 steps of the perceptual model?
Which were?
The first one is when you find a new target, unfamiliar target, and then you try to find familiar cues within the target. Then when you find the cues, then you categorize the target. Then you ignore, or you're selective about certain cues, and
Right.
then the categorization strengthens.
Starts to stay with the person. Very good. Okay, so what do you need first before you do any of that? Which is very accurate, by the way. Okay, John, it's good. What do you need? Target, perceiver, and a situation. Those are the basic components. That's how you begin to perceive. Then you start to filter it, okay, and then you go through the process. When you see something unfamiliar, you don't know what it is, you are very open to everything. You're not selective, you're not searching for things that you already recognize. You're very open to all cues, is what we're saying. Everything is possible. Once you've kind of made up your mind about what that thing is, you just narrow your search. You don't look for extra stuff because in your mind, you've categorized it. Oh, it's a duck. Or, it's a boat. Okay, I see it. Okay, now I know what it is. Done. I stopped looking for every possible possibility of what it might be. Once I've made that categorization, I've interpreted, I become very selective. I only look for things that speak to duck or boat. Okay? With people, it's the same thing. I see a new person. Who's that? Once I see a new person, I don't know who they are. I look for all kinds of things. Where did they study? Where did they work? Where they come from? What experience they have? What is all this stuff? I'm trying to figure out as much as I can. I figured out this person is not a threat. They're an ally. Good. I see good in this person. I see a positive in this person. Then from now on, I'm not going to keep going back every time I see them for the first time and say, oh, look, okay, who's this person? I'm not going to start all over. I'll say, oh yeah, good. He's an ally. She's an ally. I'm done. I'm more selective in what I look for. Okay? So, biases. What is a bias? What is a bias?
It's like something that distorts your vision.
Something that distorts your perception? Yeah. In what way?
Doesn't make it accurate.
It throws it off a little bit. It makes it inaccurate, yes. But how do biases work? Sorry? Right, well, those are examples of them. Yeah, we have a few of them. We're going to go through a few of them. Okay, but so there are a few types of biases. But what is a bias?
Well, you have certain preferences and certain like situations, so it'll be the attention of lean more over your
Okay, so based on who we are, based on our values, our personality, our experiences, we tend to see things in a particular light. We tend to judge things in advance. So we talk about prejudice as a bias. Okay, we prejudge. We talk about deciding in advance that somebody is good or bad by association. Oh, they're of a particular race, they're of a particular religion, they come from a particular school, they come from a particular country, they live in a particular part of town. So we already have our mind made up about what that is. Now sometimes it helps us better understand, better decide yay or nay, do I pick, do I not pick. In some cases it might be a little bit handy to have at least a filter. But when the filter goes too far and it distorts the view of the true situation, then you've got a bias being created. So we talked about biases, and we talked about the main biases, where we talked about primacy and recency effect. Any other biases you can think of?
Implicit differentiation.
Stereotyping.
Implicit differentiation theory.
Implicit personality theory, yes.
Personality theory.
Implicit personality. What does implicit personality theory mean? Implicit personality.
You allow certain personalities work together.
Yeah, so you're implying that some personalities have certain other characteristics. You're giving them other qualities because they are of one personality type, okay? That you're also giving them benefits. For example, I think all extroverts make, honest people. Because I've known a lot of extroverts who are really honest, so I think all extroverts are honest. So because I implied that this personality dimension will lead to honesty, I see all extroverts as honest people. Okay? Anything else? Is another one?
Projection.
Who?
central trait.
Central. Yeah, reliance on central traits. Projection. What is projection?
It's when you use your own cues and apply them to other people.
Okay, so your own values and you apply them to other people. So you're basically placing onto them, assuming that I hate the cold, so I say, oh my God, it's terrible out there, I'm sure you hate the cold too. Or maybe he loves the cold. Okay, so we just project onto others our beliefs and our values. Okay? Talk about attributions. What is an attribution? What is another word for attribution?
Motives and causes for behavior.
Motive or cause for behavior. Okay, it's an explanation. It's a reason. Okay, that explains the behavior. So to what do you attribute someone's behavior? Okay, so the motive or cause.
Situation or their dispositions.
Situation or disposition through the interactions approach. Exactly. So you're explaining it. You can be someone who attributes behavior based solely on disposition, which means you'll always base someone's behavior strictly on their personality. You can be a situational type of individual who says all behavior is a function of the surrounding environment. Okay, that's how you attribute. That's understanding attribution. We're good? So bias is an attribution. We talked a little bit about them. There are some other biases you can look through the book. If you have any questions about how they function, how they work, please ask. Okay? Workforce diversity. What is diversity and how do you value diversity? What do we talk about workforce diversity? What do we mean by that?
Having people from different cultures and different like races and
Okay. So how, various everything, race, culture, religion, sexual orientation, age, diverse across the board, handicapped, able-bodied, fully diverse. How does a company value diversity? What can a company do to value diversity? It says we value diversity. What does that mean? We value diversity. It's a nice sticker to put on the wall. What does it mean when we value diversity?
they value having people from different parts of the world because they all have a different perspective.
Okay, very good. People from different parts of the world have different perspectives. What else?
I think because the workforce is becoming more diverse.
The workforce is becoming diverse. You've got to take advantage of all the assets out there. Very good. What else? What else? What else? How do companies value diversity?
To be able to have like diverse clients.
It's great from a marketing and sales perspective, absolutely, because we're working within a global context, we're selling to a global context. You have people from all parts of the world, various walks of life, again, various ages, gender, sexual orientation, whatever, okay? Again, we're using it to the advantage of the organization because it gives organizations a competitive advantage. Okay, you have to be able to tell me a little bit about that if I were to ask you about it.
How would it, I have to hear it says cost, like how cost make you give a competitive advantage in terms of diversity?
When you're looking to take a product to market and you don't have any expertise in a particular region, you have to go and hire people. Okay, you go and bring in consultants, you bring in local knowledge and local expertise. When you've got them on your team, they're yours. You're saving a lot of money when you've got that sensitivity. Before you go and create a product that it will work great in Japan. Well, imagine if you have somebody on your team from Japan and has access, you've got a diverse force that brings in perspectives and tells you, you know what, that product's really not going to work in Japan for a number of reasons, and we'll explain why. So before you go and blow your brains out creating a project that doesn't sell, you save yourself a lot of time and effort and money in that process. Okay? We're good? Any other questions about that? Chapter 3 is relatively straightforward, not as many theories. So far so good. Chapter 4. Values. What are values? What is a value? Come on, this is easy. Right. It's the how we see what versus what. Good versus bad. Right versus wrong. Okay? So it's a judgment. We pass judgment on a situation based on our values. It's how we see and interpret right from wrong. Okay? Very broad tendency. It's a very broad concept. All right? Again, cross-cultural variations. There are many variations from culture to culture and even from generation to generation that sees or values things differently or perceives right, wrong, good, bad. Attitude. What is an attitude? We understand value is really broad. What's an attitude?
It's the way you tend to act or behave.
Attitude is not how you behave necessarily, no. What is an attitude? Come on, you guys should know this.
It is set or evaluated traits.
Okay.
How you respond, like your behavior.
Your response. the feelings you have, okay, the feelings you have about something. Okay, your attitudes are the feelings you have about a particular issue because they've been filtered through your values. Okay, they're more narrow. They're related to a particular issue. Okay? How do people change attitudes? How do you develop it? How do you change an attitude? Just you, in your own words. How do you develop an attitude? How do you change an attitude?
Experiences.
Experiences? Yes. What else?
Manipulation.
Manipulation is a big word.
Or like persuasion of it.
Persuasion, being education, experience, exposure, okay? Seeing things from a different perspective. Seeing things from a different perspective will change one's attitude. Obviously, it's going to go through your filter of values. If you still see it as wrong, you might not change your attitude about it. All right? What's the notion of job satisfaction? What do we mean by job satisfaction? What is the notion of things that contribute to job satisfaction? Job?
It's just about something else. And what about all the Hofstede and general racial differences? And
You're gonna do all that in a second.
sorry. It's just the way that employees feel about their jobs.
Okay? It's how someone feels towards their job. Okay? It's not, we're not quite at motivation, it's coming. We're talking about job satisfaction. If one is happy, there are things they can be happy with and things that they're not happy with. What are those things called?
Facets.
Facets, exactly. Very good. So there's facet satisfaction. You can be very satisfied with the salary and not particularly satisfied with the working environment, but still be overall very satisfied with your job. Might be very satisfied with the type of work you're doing and the colleagues and the environment, but the salary can be but you still be satisfied. Okay? That's what we talk about when you're happy with your job situation because of various aspects of the job. Okay? Talk about, there are a number of theories that talk about discrepancy, fairness, disposition, mood, and emotion. Just quickly, discrepancy. What is discrepancy?
The difference between the outcome you expect and the outcome you receive.
Yes, compared to nobody else, compared to yourself. Okay, so what you get out of the job versus what you put into it. If there's a huge gap, I work way too much for this salary. There's a huge discrepancy. Or I work way too hard to have a crappy cubicle office. Okay, so what I'm getting at, I deserve a little bit better. So what you expect from the job versus what you put in, discrepancy. Fairness, we talked about fairness. 3 kinds of fairness. Procedural, which is about
How it's
process, how resources are divided. Yes, procedural. Distributive, which is equity theory is a great example. Distributive fairness is not the how, but the what. It's the what. It's what resources. Okay? So which resources are distributed to whom? Okay? First, so we talked about distributive, and then what's the third? Interaction, which is how the results are communicated, right? Okay, or how the process is communicated. It's basically it's one-on-one, individual with the person doing the resource distribution. Okay, usually with the manager. Okay, so 3 levels of fairness. And we talked about distributive fairness, and somebody mentioned equity theory. Equity theory. What is equity theory? Procedural.
The input divided by the output, right? Compared to someone else.
Inputs and outcomes compared to someone in a similar situation as you. Not exact, ideally exact, but sometimes exact is not available. So similar is good. Okay? Yes?
Get down to procedural, I don't understand.
Procedural.
Fairness.
Procedural fairness is the way resources are distributed. How are they distributed? Based on what? How come he gets $100,000 for doing the same job that I'm getting $80,000 for? How does he get more money? How does that work? Or how come I have to work on 5 clients, he's got to work on 2, we're getting the same salary? How is that given? Okay, so a nice little tidy theory for explaining procedural fairness could be equity theory. Okay? Equity theory explains it nicely. How is the resource distributed? How is that done? If there's a policy in place, and we say people with so much experience and everything's very transparent and clear, that we know that in a similar situation in the future, resources will be distributed the same way. So the procedure is consistent and repeated over time, and isn't because, oh, I like him better, and I don't like you that much. That's why you're getting more and he's getting less work, okay? If I can see that it's clear and it could be applied to anybody, I see the procedure as fair. I see that it's a fair procedure, that I'm not, you know, I thought it wasn't fair, but now that I look at it, because of his qualifications, because of his experience in the company, his seniority, whatever the procedure used to assign work, comes off as fair. Expectancy theory. Someone tell me what expectancy theory is. What does expectancy theory tell us? What does it involve?
Expectation
Expectation that.
about your job.
We talk about, there are two components that we look at first.
Isn't it the one with first level and second level?
Very
outcome?
good. Outcomes, exactly. So first level outcome benefits who?
Employers,
Employer. First level outcome benefits the company. Second level outcome benefits
employees.
employees. So, expectancy theory is the expectation that first level outcomes will lead to second level outcomes. If I do my job well, I will get paid a bonus. First, I do my job well, which helps my company. Then my second level outcome is I get the bonus, which helps me. Okay? What are the other parts that we talk about when we talk about expectancy theory? How do we know? What if it's, if I tell you there's an expectation that if you do your job well, you might get a bonus, versus if you do your job well, you will get a bonus? Which one are you prefer to have? You will, the guarantee, right? So, if first level outcome leads very directly to a second level outcome, it's very instrumental. So we talk about instrumentality. It's instrumental, you have to do this in order to get that. Okay? And then, depending how much you value the outcomes, will determine the valence you put on it. So valence are numbers. Basically, I put a value. I like the bonus. Or maybe I don't necessarily like the bonus. Maybe I'd rather have time off. So if you offer me more money, I might not be that motivated to work hard to get that bonus. I'd rather have the time off. Right, we're getting from, it's the same part of the theory of motivation and expectation. Sorry, well, it is motivation theory, but I'm just jumping into it now because it lends itself nicely with the whole idea of job satisfaction. Okay? But I will get into it in chapter 5. Thank you, Vito.
Do you need to fill out a calculator or?
No, we're no calculating valence and outcomes, no. Okay? Job satisfaction, if you're satisfied, what happens to absenteeism and turnover?
Decreases.
What happens to performance?
Increases.
Guaranteed?
No.
Not necessarily. Why not?
You could be happy but not good at this job.
Why would you not be good at your job?
You could not have the cognitive ability to be.
Maybe you don't have the ability, right? Maybe you don't have the actual skills. Okay, maybe you don't have the right equipment. Okay, but you're really happy in your job, doesn't mean you're gonna perform. Okay? What's OCB? Organizational citizenship behavior. What are the characteristics of OCB? Voluntary, spontaneous, not rewarded, and benefits the organization, contributes to the effectiveness of the organization. So helping somebody just because you want to help somebody with their work. Volunteering to stay and do a little extra because you know the company needs your input. Exactly. Okay, that's OCB. Very straightforward. Okay, so organizational citizenship behavior is not on a job description and it's not necessarily rewarded. Okay, you're not getting given a bonus for being a good organizational citizen. So you do it out of sheer desire to contribute. Okay, and customer satisfaction we understand when the customers are happy. Okay, 3 kinds of commitment. Okay, what is affective commitment? Staying in a job, being committed to a job because they want to. Because an individual wants to. Why would somebody want to?
Because they like.
He's been in the company for
They
20
like-
years. Like you said, like, isn't it like an example, like your grandparents used to think that you should stay in a job for 20 years because you're gonna work your way up.
Well, no, I think when we talk about affective commitment, we're referring to people who stay in a job because they really want to stay in the job. They like the job, they associate themselves with the job. It is something out of desire. they choose not to look around. Okay, so they're committed, wonderfully committed, for all the right reasons. Okay, because they want to be there. What is continuance commitment?
They have to be there
They have to. Why would somebody have to be there?
because it costs.
Family, costs,
Of moving.
cost of moving, the benefits hold them in place, job market sucks. Okay, maybe they have no other options. They couldn't make the same salary on the outside. Okay, continuance is they have to. Last one, normative commitment. Feel obliged. They feel that they should stay. Why do they feel they should stay?
Maybe the company gave them a lot over the years. And they
Yes.
feel guilty leaving.
Okay, yes? Yeah, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of volunteer type organizations have people who stay out of normative commitment because they feel that there's a moral obligation for people to help out in these contexts. The company has given them a lot in the past. Yeah, there's a certain, like a debt owed, I feel I should stay because of how they've helped me. They helped me when they were going through some downsizing, they didn't get rid of me because they knew I had a young child and, I feel like this obligation to stay. Okay, and there are some people who really feel that way, even in a corporate setting. And
I'm not sure the difference between continuous and normative, in the continuous, you feel like the job? Or-
continuance, no, you're not particularly thrilled, but you feel you have to stay. You might not hate it, but you have to stay because you're too committed. We talk about something called side bets. Side bets are things where you'll start a small business on the side or you buy a cottage. Your mortgage gets you right up to here. So now if I change jobs and I gotta pay for all these things, I'm likely to be very, very stressed for a few months, maybe a few years. So at this point, I have no choice, I gotta stay. The job is getting boring, it's getting more stressful, but I have no options but to stay because I've committed myself to so many other things that leaving is not really an option. Okay? Or they've been around for the company for so long and they have their pension fund riding on it, they can't just pull out now and lose potential gains of the pension. So they have to stay, they've invested so much in it. Okay? Whereas normative is feeling that you should stay, a sense of obligation, a sense that, you know what, they were there for me, I need to be there for them. I've got to make sure I'm there because imagine if everybody took advantage of them, the organization would shut down. Usually people associate themselves with the brand or the cause, which is why not-for-profits or political parties, they tend to have a lot of people with normative commitment.
But a person in a normal commitment, be thrilled about their job too, or just?
I think that's a good question, because they could be thrilled about their job or they could not be thrilled about their job. They just feel that there's a higher cause and a higher calling that brings them to that job. So they don't even worry about whether or not they're happy or satisfied. They really think that it's really their duty to be there. Okay? And so they take comfort in that. All right? We're good? Talk about how organizations can foster organizational commitment. If you're the manager, what kind of commitment do you want from your employees? Affective, exactly. You don't want to ever tie anybody in with, golden handcuff type salaries where you throw so much money at them, they feel they have to stay and the work isn't particularly thrilling. Okay, so you want to make sure the work is interesting. The best kind you want to see is affective. Okay, when we get into motivation, what did Hofstad speak about? He talked about 4 dimensions, 4 aspects. Okay, power distance, which is a tolerance for what?
Inequality.
Between?
Powers.
Between who and who?
Management and employees.
Right, management employee. Power distance, high power distance culture. Cultures will tolerate a great discrepancy between the power between management and subordinates. What's the second one?
Masculinity, femininity.
Masculinity, femininity. A masculine culture values what? Yes, but a masculine environment has very clear guidelines for what men do and what women do. It's a clear delimitation between the sexes. Okay, it's not just men do everything. It's a tendency towards male management, okay, male bosses, male direction, but the role of the sexes is very clearly defined. In a feminine culture, roles are more equal, fluid. Okay, you can have a male caregiver, you can have a female firefighter, they don't worry about it, they don't have the stereotypes associated with them. Good, that's 2. What's the third one?
Long-term.
Individual versus collectivism. Individual cultures value who? Themselves. Yeah, me, myself, and I. Okay? Everything's good to help as long as I help myself first. Okay? So, me, myself, and I. Individual. Collective. Interested in the family, the village, the corporation, the group, okay? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Okay, it's seen that way. The fourth one?
Uncertainty avoidance.
Uncertainty avoidance. What is uncertainty avoidance? That gives people a bit of a hard time. What is uncertainty avoidance?
Whether you're comfortable with when situations are ambiguous or not.
That's right. The tolerance for ambiguity. Okay, tolerance for ambiguity and things for clarity. Yeah.
Could you give like a real life example of that? Like, let's say, what would be an example? Like,
Okay.
what you're saying?
Uncertainty avoidance is not knowing what the future holds. Okay, so planning for the future, there are some cultures that have to have a complete say of your financial plan. In North America, okay, we like to make sure that things are planned. We have our retirement plan, we have so much money in RSPs, we have our TFSAs. We like to know where things are coming. Okay, what the future might have and have ways to deal with it in those times of uncertainty. Okay, we don't like the idea of uncertainty. We don't like the idea of, que sera, sera. Whatever, you know, you only live once, whatever happens, happens, let's just relax and enjoy the moment. Okay, we don't believe in that type of approach, okay? So a culture that seizes the moment and just does whatever, takes risks, okay? Takes, you know, not sure of what work is going to be committed to achieve what kind of outcome, will be that way. Will be a bit less on that uncertainty avoidance. Okay? Good. That's what we need to know about Hofstede.
No
That's it.
long-term, short-term orientation.
Well, no, I mean, we looked at the Canadian, Michael Bond, we looked at the long versus short-term orientation. It's controversial, they agree to disagree. But again, they say basically a long-term orientation can be seen, you know, among cultures that tend to produce more entrepreneurs. They look at the long term, they basically invest for the next 10, 15, 20 years rather than worrying about the next quarter. Okay, and that's just a different, one additional dimension. Okay? Chapter 5, what's motivation? How do you define motivation? Intrinsic or extrinsic, there's both. Desire to what? There's what? Okay, to apply effort towards achievement of a goal. Okay? So a desire to apply effort towards the achievement of a goal, right? Don't forget that the components are important. So the basic properties. And how is that related to motivation? Sorry, to performance. How is motivation and performance related? Is it related?
Yes,
How is it related?
positively correlated. Positive correlation.
So somebody who's very motivated will perform better than somebody who's not.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, right? Remember that. Not necessarily. Why not? There are contingencies, right? There are contingencies. There's skill, there's experience, there's equipment, there's a lot of other things. You could be super motivated and not be good at it. Or you could be demotivated and just be pretty skilled and still perform relatively well. One is not an automatic predictor of the other, although one would think that you'd rather have motivated people because they would tend to perform a little better, provided they're given the tools and the experience and the education. Okay? Intrinsic versus extrinsic. Give me an example of intrinsic motivation. Give me an example of intrinsic.
Do it for yourself, like social recognition.
No, okay, social recognition could be a way to recognize you, yes, but you're not doing it for the recognition, right?
Okay, you're doing it for yourself.
Personal satisfaction.
Achievement.
Right, so a sense of accomplishment, okay? Loving the work itself. Factors that make you feel like you make a difference are intrinsic factors. They motivate you to do it because you want to do it, because you love to do it, and the motivation comes from the actual job. It doesn't come from somebody giving you a pat on the back, although a pat on the back is always very nice. Okay, it's very nice, but you're doing it because of the love of what you do. All right? Extrinsic, very easy. What's the easiest one?
Monetary.
Monetary, straightforward. Give money. Okay? Do this, you get a bonus. Do that, you get a benefit. Do this, you get an extra stock option. Okay? Very easy. Extrinsic, it's a carrot. It's dangling the carrot to get people to go towards and apply effort towards the attainment of a goal. We talked about autonomous motivation. What is autonomous motivation?
Kind of like intrinsic, where you motivate yourself.
It's kind of like intrinsic, exactly. It's like intrinsic motivation, where it comes from you. You set the pace. You find it within yourself. You set the goal. You decide how much effort. You decide how much dedication you have towards the achievement of the goal. It comes from you, of a desire to achieve. Okay? Versus controlled motivation, which would be like extrinsic. It's very similar, it's two different definitions, but it's the same thing, okay? It's control. Someone else has power over you because of their ability to bestow rewards. So they can get you to do stuff because they can pay you, or they can give you a better schedule, or they can give you a better place to sit in the office. Because they can give you those rewards, they have control over the level of motivation you'll have. Clear? Yes? Self-determination, can someone describe it briefly, very briefly, self-determination? In your own words, self-determination, don't worry about the book definition. What is self-determination? Okay, good. Motivate yourself to achieve a goal that you set for yourself. So you determine the entire process. Okay, you're pretty much in control of the whole system. That's all it says. Okay, you can use far more words and get into more detail, but in basic terms, okay, you set the goal and you set the procedure to achieve that goal. Okay.
Yeah, really quickly, so like self-determination would be kind of like intrinsic, but you set the pace, you set the procedures.
Yeah. Okay. Well, self-determination, basically you use the word self-determination. Just sometimes when you're not clear about a theory, by explaining it in a sense of the way the words seem to spell out, will help you get the answer. Okay, what predicts performance? What predicts performance? What is highly linked to performance? What leads to performance? Emotional intelligence, understanding, cognitive ability, okay, general cognitive ability, intellect, the ability to process a lot of information. Okay, it's handy. It's very good to be smart. All right, it's good to be smart because it allows you to process a lot of information. It's not the only determinant, but it's one component where cognitive ability helps you to learn. Okay, it helps you to learn, which then leads to performance mastery, which leads to better outcomes. Okay? Emotional intelligence is, how do you define emotional intelligence?
How do you deal with your own personal emotions?
How you deal with your own personal emotions?
The ability to understand.
Ability to identify and understand emotions. More?
Yeah, like 5 steps, but the last one would be to control other people's emotions, like understand them and.
Regulate your own, right? That's right, and then be able to work in a manner that helps other people manage their emotions too. Okay, working and deciding and speaking and functioning based on the interpretation of emotions. Being able to see and change what you do or adapt your behavior or your approach to suit a particular situation based on emotional cues. Okay?
Do you ever know the hierarchy of it, of emotional intelligence?
Just know that there are the steps, and might ask you to give me, in your words, give me the steps of what would do, how do you do better. Interpret the situation. McClellan. Well, how many needs does McClellan talk about?
3.
What are they?
Achievement.
Achievement. What motivates somebody who's high need for achievement? Goals. Recognition. Feedback. They like feedback.
People power.
But what, it's still an achievement. What else is on achievement? What motivates somebody?
Challenge.
Challenge. Relatively challenging goals, right? What else? What else motivates them? Look at. Yeah, personal responsibility. So accountability for the outcomes. Okay, what's kind of job? What's a person that would be interested in that kind of, or be likely motivated by achievement? Sales. Entrepreneur. Okay. Yes. Think of a salesperson, entrepreneur, someone who, or you know, if you're stuck, you can think of a professional athlete. They do it. Yes, they do it to an extent for the money, but they also do it for the sense that I can break the record. They like to be the ones to set the new standard. They want to be responsible for the outcomes. They want the recognition. Okay? A silver medal is not enough. They want the gold. Okay? Second, need for
Affiliation.
affiliation. What is the need for affiliation? What is that? What is it defined by?
Like,
Establish or maintain relationships with them.
Yeah, establish or maintain relationships. Very good. What else? What motivates them?
Social setting.
Social contexts, where you can interact with people. What else?
Interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, so the values in the interpersonal relationships. Okay, what kind of a job would appeal to someone who is a high need for affiliation? Social worker, somebody in customer service. okay? Somebody who works in a team environment, someone who's part of a union, who believes in strength in numbers, okay? Someone who'd rather be on a team rather than play as an individual, okay? Third one, I need for
Power.
power, right. Power, how is it defined?
Wanting
Desire to
to have control over people.
have control, influence others, dictate or move people's opinions, right? So there is all about being in charge, being able to influence, being able to motivate people to do things that they see as important. What kind of people, what kind of jobs would appeal to these people? To a journalist, why? Well, they have the last word. They can influence a great number of people with one simple article. What else would be a good job for somebody with a high need for power?
President.
President, yes, okay. Politician, oftentimes has a high need for power. Okay, what else? In business terms? Yeah, high-level manager, CEO, exactly. Okay, high-level management. We're good? That's McClellan, you got it all right. Expectancy, sorry, I was on the wrong chapter, thank you, Vito. Expectancy theory, remember we talked about the first and second level outcomes, right? First level outcome benefits the organization, second level outcome benefits you, the individual, right? The valence, the value of each outcome, how important is it, how valuable is it to you, will determine how much effort you put in to try to achieve those outcomes. All right? And the instrumentality speaks to how assured one outcome will lead to a second outcome. If there's a chance that it's going to lead to it, maybe low instrumentality. If it's guaranteed, it's high instrumentality. Right? And we talk about effort, right, or force. How much energy do you put into achieving the first in order to achieve the second level outcome? Okay? Those are just the components, as long as you understand that it's how, you can use your own words, but as long as you understand the moving parts, then we're okay. Any questions about expectancy?
What was the example for the reactor?
Okay, so I gave you the example before about if you, for example, if you are in, you're in charge of production. I tell you, Lee, if you can get your employees to produce 10% more this month, okay, your name goes into a draw for a trip to Cuba. You think, wow, so now you gotta go and ride their butts and say, you gotta work, I gotta work, because you might maybe win a job to Cuba, a trip to Cuba. Now that's nice. So the first level outcome is what? 10% more. 10% more benefits the organization. Second level outcome is trip to Cuba. Now, do you like Cuba? Yeah. Well, therefore, the value of Cuba first, so low valence. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, I gotta work my butt off and ask for all these people to do all this extra stuff for Cuba. So the valence is low in Lee's case. Now, I say you're gonna go into a draw to maybe win a trip. Is it instrumental? Does one lead to the other, guaranteed? No, so it's low instrumentality, right? If I know you'd much rather go to Hawaii. Okay, so I tell you, you do that 10% more with your staff, you get guaranteed trip to Hawaii at the end of the month. All of a sudden, valence goes up because you'd rather be in Hawaii over Cuba. Instrumentality goes up because it's not maybe, it's for sure. So where are you likely to get more effort exerted? Hawaii, the second scenario. Okay, and that's what expectancy theory says. That's all it says.
What do you mean like low valence and high instrumentality?
Where can you have?
Low valence and high instrumentality.
Well, you can have low valence. I say you're guaranteed to go to Cuba. But Cuba for her is kind of like, I've been like 5 times. I don't want to go there.
So low valence and
High instrumentality. So it's automatically linked, but the value, low. So the class ends at 10 o'clock, right? Equity theory we talked about to death. Comparison of inputs to outcomes to another in a similar situation. Goal setting theory. What is goal setting theory? Quickly. Let me get through this. You do your assignment later, I guess. Okay. Goal setting theory. What is goal setting theory? Setting a goal, what does it mean?
Setting goals to motivate employees.
Right, setting goals to motivate employees. What it says is, It's better to know where we are going than to just work randomly. Goal setting theory says, I'm headed there, but in the meantime, we're going to try to achieve this, and then this other milestone or this other benchmark before we get to our eventual goal. Okay, so what it does is it breaks up the entire goal into smaller parts and allows you to see what is expected of you. By knowing what is expected of you, you tend to be more motivated to do the work because you have a certain belief that while I can't do that yet, I know I can do this. Okay? Asking someone to just, ski for the first time, not motivating. Stand up and move your feet, you know you can do that. So you break up the goal into smaller parts so that you feel a sense of achievement going forward. Cross-cultural limitations. Are theories of motivation exportable or importable? It depends. On what? Do people in all cultures believe or have a need to be motivated? All cultures experience motivation. Okay? Every culture you go to has more and less motivating jobs and more and less motivating bosses and more and less motivating processes. However, does something that motivates somebody here work well in China?
No.
Not necessarily, okay? So there are limitations. What are some of the limitations? What are some factors?
Well, if we're talking about the theories, I think expectancy worked everywhere. Equity didn't work because some countries prefer equality.
Equality over equity, exactly. More collective as opposed to individualistic. Equity is beautiful, right? Expectancy is a nicer thing to use because everybody has an expectation, if I do this, I will get that. Okay? What the value is. In some places it might be a new car, in another place it might be a bonus, it might be a smaller amount of money, it might be whatever. It might be time off. Some cultures might value time off versus a trip. Okay, so expectancy theory, the pieces are all the same. So expectancy theory translates well from culture to culture. It works very well. Okay, because you can change the components of it. The components are all there, but what you put in, okay, as in the outcomes can change from culture to culture. Okay, but there's no guarantee that they're going to be the same all the way around. Okay, so there are some challenges with some cultures and importing and exporting certain theories. Okay, the questions are all the same. The answers are different. Okay, to finish this, I want to give you a money is a motivator. Why is money motivating?
High valence.
High valence, because it's what you can do with the money. Thank you, Julia. What you can do with the money. It's individual to each. It's a one-size-fits-all. If I gave anybody, I want to pick on anybody. If I give you each $5,000, chances are each of you will spend it differently. That's why it's valuable. You'll spend it on whatever matters to you. Okay? Job design is a motivator. What does that mean? What is job design as a motivator? What is that?
How your job is designed, like what do you have, what's included inside your job?
What's included in the job? What is expected of the job? What are the components of the job? Give me an example of a component of job design.
Work schedule.
Work schedule. Okay, no, but that's schedule, it's fine. What else? What else is a component of your job? All schedule. Benefits. Okay, the facets of the job, right? The job itself can be motivating because it's got certain things about it. Okay, the way the work is scheduled, the work itself, right? The work itself is a motivator, can be a motivator. Okay? What are the job characteristics? What are they? What are the 5 core job characteristics? Skill, variety. Task, what is skill variety?
Having
Number of activities you do on your job.
task identity.
Okay. First is skill variety, that's number of tasks or number of the variety of skills you have to have or tasks that you do on the job. Yes. Task identity, what is task identity? Seeing from start to finish. Seeing a job from start to finish. That's task identity, right? Be able to produce something, A to Z. Third, task significance. What does task significance mean? The impact? The impact what you do has on other people. So what you do, what impact does it have on other people? Do you feel that you're contributing significantly to someone else? Fourth, Autonomy. Autonomy means,
Getting back feedback.
that's feedback after, autonomy.
The degree of control?
Degree of control that you exercise, right, okay? So your discretion, how much discretion you have in the way you do your work. And the fifth is feedback. So what is feedback?
Getting back response from you.
Getting back information about the performance of your task, okay? You have to know those 5 core characteristics, okay? Job enrichment, quickly, give me a quick definition of job enrichment.
To enhance intrinsic motivation, quality of work and life.
Okay, what are you trying to do when you enrich a job? You're trying to make it more interesting or intrinsically motivating. Okay? Job enrichment strives to increase the intrinsic motivating potential of a job. That's all. You're trying to make the job more interesting. We're good? That's what we're trying to do with job enrichment. So you improve things within the job that makes the person like the job a little bit more. Okay, goal setting and MBO, management by objectives. What is MBO?
It's an elaborate, systematic, ongoing program designed to facilitate goal accomplishment.
Yes. What does that mean? What does it mean? What does MBO mean? Okay, how does the MBO system work? What's the process?
You set goals and then you have to,
So you sit down with somebody, you sit down with your manager, and you set goals together, you talk about the goal, right? You have periodic review periods to talk about how that goal is coming along. Then you have a formal review, maybe every 6 months or every year, ideally more frequently. You're evaluated on it. Then you try to bring in corrective measures, and then you repeat the cycle. You're given objectives along the way to a longer goal. How is that similar to goal setting? How is that similar to goal setting? It's pretty much the exact same thing, but MBO documents the process and puts an interactive component into place. Okay, it's the same thing. It's goal setting theory with feedback and follow-ups and reviews and evaluation, of course.
Yeah, always continues.
It's continuous. Yes, it doesn't stop.
Once you do, let's say, 5K in a certain amount of time, then you want to do it quicker.
Well, yes, and I think it's more from a work perspective. Management by objective is being managed by someone.
But goal setting could be anything.
Goal setting can be anything. MBO is an example of goal setting in a work context where you're setting the goals and working with your manager to get some reviews on that, okay? All right. Alternate work schedules. Give me one example of an alternate work schedule. Flex time. What is flex time?
Flexible arrival and departure.
Flexible arrival and departure. Bingo. That's it. Same number of hours, just you move the arrival and departure time. Okay, good. Compressed work week. Okay, you've got telecommuting and so on.